19-year-old Zinlay returns to her village for the reed dance to honor her mother. She uncovers a dark secret, one tied to her mother's death and a sinister plan by the village elders. Haunted by whispers, nightmares, and a forgotten ritual, she must face the truth before an ancient evil is unleashed. Will she stop the darkness, or will the reed dance turn into a night of terror? The bus ride to Nongoma was a journey to another world. Zinlay stared out the window as the city gave way to rolling hills and seemingly endless sugarcane fields. She hadn't been back to her village since her mother died 10 years ago. The reed dance had called her home, a means of reconnecting with her heritage and remembering her mother. But when the bus swayed over bumps, Zinlay could not shake the feeling that something lay in ambush for her. Something she was not equipped to deal with. When she finally disembarked from the bus, the air was thick with the scent of earth and smoke. The village was unaltered but altered. On her way to her grandmother's house, she noticed the villagers muttering and casting nervous looks her way. Zinlay saw a dream of fire on the first night of her stay in the village. She dreamed she saw her mother, Nomvula, standing in the center of the reed dance, smudged in ash on the face, her eyes full of tears. There were burning reeds around her and the cries of young girls shrieking in the night. Zinlay sat up startled, panting, her heart pounding. The next day, her grandmother gave her a package of the traditional attire for reed dance. "Your mother would have been so proud," she said, and there was a trembling in her voice. Zinlay longed to ask her about the dream, but something in the eyes of her grandmother held her back. Later, when she walked her people down to the river to gather the reeds, she felt an odd draw, as though water was calling her. At the river, Zinlay caught up to the other maidens, and their voices were heard in laughter and song. But stooping to pick up a reed, she heard it, a low, gentle whispering, as the wind spoke a name. Her name. She stood as if rooted, her trembling fingers curled around the reed. When she lifted her head, the other maidens were gone. The riverbank was eerily still, and the sun seemed to wane. Zinlay turned to leave, but the whisper came again, louder. "Find me," it said. She ran back to the village, pounding her heart. That night, she found an old photograph of her mother hidden in her grandmother's chest. On the back was a single word: beware. The next day, Zinlay encountered Sifo, a friend she had not seen for years. He was taller now, with a strength that was unobtrusive but comforting. When she spoke of the whisper and the photo, his face became somber. "There are things about your mother," he said. "Things nobody wants to talk about." Before he could elaborate, a woman in her late years walked up to them. Her eyes were milky, but her voice cut through. "You are just like her," she said to Zinlay. "But beware. The past always catches up." Zinlay attempted to ask her more questions, but the woman vanished into the crowd. That evening, Zinlay discovered a reed on her doorstep. It was blackened, as if it had been burned. Zinlay's nightmares grew stronger. She had the fire night after night, heard screams, and felt the burn on her body. She began to see the strange symbols etched on rocks and trees throughout the village. Sifo helped her do some research, and they found that the symbols were part of an ancient Zulu ritual, a ritual that involved calling on power through sacrifice. One evening, on their way back from the river, they saw smoke rising from the village. They sprinted towards it, and in shock, they found Zinlay's grandmother's hut ablaze. The villagers put out the fire, but Zinlay knew that it was not an accident. Someone was trying to send her a message. Zinlay's grandmother survived the fire, but she was traumatized. She had fainted that night and revealed the truth to Zinlay. "Your mother did not die in an accident," she told her. "She sacrificed her life to save something terrible. Something that is coming back." Zinlay's heart hammered when her grandmother told her of the black ceremonies that used to haunt the village. Nomvula had discovered that someone with authority was abusing the reed dance to damage innocent maidens. To end it, she had performed a ceremony of her own, interring the evil, though at cost. Zinlay's back shivered. The rumors, the visions, the fires, all were connected. The reed dance was just days away, and tension in the village had been mounting. Zinlay began to feel a shadow following her, a presence always just out of sight. Sifo accompanied her, but even he could not try to make sense of what was occurring. That night, Zinlay decided to confront the shadow. She followed it to the river, where she discovered a tiny, hidden cave. There was a pile of burnt reeds and her mother's necklace within. She stretched out to take it when she heard footsteps approaching from behind. She turned around, but too late. The cave entrance caved in, trapping her in the darkness. Zinlay's flashlight went out as she navigated through the cave. Walls were covered with the same symbols that she had seen around the village. She found a diary at the back of the cave, her mother's diary. Pages were filled with details about the dark rituals and the sacrifices. Reading, Zinlay realized the reality. The bad thing her mother had imprisoned was linked to the reed dance. And now it was returning. She heard the noise behind her and turned around to find the dark figure at the cave entrance. It came into the light, and she recognized a face. It belonged to someone she trusted. The man was Sifo's uncle, a village elder. He smiled, but his smile was hollow and cold. "You shouldn't have come back," he said to him. "Your mother's sacrifice was all in vain. The ritual must be completed." Zinlay's head reeled. She had to escape, but the cave was sealed off. The elder approached her, and she spotted a loose rock in the wall. She removed it and threw it at him, allowing her just enough time to slip past. She ran through the tunnels, the sound of the elder's laughter echoing behind her. She finally broke out into the woods, many miles from the village. Zinlay realized that she must abort the ritual before the reed dance. She and Sifo opened her mother's diary and discovered the sealing ritual. But it was costly, one she wasn't sure she was prepared to pay. As they prepared, Zinlay noticed Sifo acting strange. He was quiet, almost secretive. She inquired what was wrong with him, and he stuttered. "There is something I must tell you," he said. But before he could proceed, they overheard a noise outside. The elder had caught up with them. Zinlay and Sifo barely escaped the elder's clutches, dashing into the thick woods as the sounds of pursuit increased. The only light they had was the moon, which sent sinister shadows dancing across the trees. Zinlay's heart racing, she understood that they were being herded toward the river, the same spot where the dark ritual had commenced all those years ago. When they reached the riverbank, Sifo grasped her arm. "We can't flee any longer," he said to her. "We must face him." But they hadn't a chance to make a plan when the elder emerged from among the trees, his eyes burning with malice. "You can't stop what has been begun," he said to them, waving a ceremonial knife in their direction. Zinlay and Sifo moved back, but the river lay behind them and the elder was coming closer. When the elder came near, Zinlay remembered her mother's diary. The ritual of sealing was performed by an offering, but not a life. A life was not required, only something of great personal worth. She extended her hand into her pocket and pulled out her mother's necklace, the one she found in the cave. "Take this," she told him, holding it out to the elder. "It's all that I have of hers." The elder hesitated, his gaze glinting with doubt. But then he laughed. "You think a trinket will save you?" He took the necklace from her hand. Zinlay's heart plummeted, but Sifo stepped forward. "Then take me," he said. "I'll be your sacrifice." The elderly man laughed, but Zinlay saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. She knew he was not as confident as he talked. He was afraid that the ritual would not work. She grasped Sifo's hand and whispered, "Trust me." Zinlay started chanting the words in her mother's diary before the elder could say a word. The air became thick, and the river seemed to surge about them. The elder let out a scream, tumbling and dropping the necklace as the ground he stood on started cracking. Zinlay recognized that this was her opportunity, but the ritual was not finished. She had to make a decision. Finish the ritual and risk losing Sifo, or end it and allow the elder to triumph. Zinlay chose to finish the ritual. She shut her eyes and began chanting again, louder now as the wind howled around them. The elder tried to stop her, but the river charged forward, carrying him off in a whirlpool of water and reeds. Sifo grabbed Zinlay's hand, his grip tight. "Whatever happens, I'm with you," he said. The storm grew stronger, and Zinlay felt herself being pulled into the river. She fought to stay grounded, but the power of the ritual was overwhelming. Just as she thought she couldn't hold on any longer, the storm stopped. The river was calm, and the elder was gone. But so was Sifo. Zinlay awoke on the riverbank, the sun breaking over the hills. She was in pain and her clothes were soaked, but she was alive. She looked around for Sifo but could not find him anywhere. When she returned to the village, all was silence, their awed and terror-stricken faces. They had seen the tempest and they knew that something had happened. Zinlay's grandmother gathered her into an embrace, shedding tears of rejoicing. "You did it," she burst out. "You stopped him." But there was no delight in Zinlay. Sifo was dead, and she did not even know if he was alive anymore. Zinlay did not think that Sifo was dead. She searched for him in the river and forest for days, calling out his name. The villagers helped her at first, but after several days, they lost hope too. Zinlay's grandmother advised her to move on, but she was unable to. One night, as she sat by the river, she heard a faint whisper. It was Sifo's voice, calling her name. She followed the sound to the cave where she had found her mother's journal. Inside, she found Sifo, weak but alive. He smiled weakly. "I knew you'd come," he said. But before she could respond, they heard footsteps outside the cave. Someone was coming. Zinlay and Sifo huddled in the darkness as the footsteps drew near. It was the elder, and he was changed, thin and white, as if the ritual had drained the life from him. But he was alive, and he was searching for something. Zinlay knew he was searching for the journal. She had brought it along with her, and it was now the only obstacle between him and the successful completion of the ritual. She whispered to Sifo, "We need to leave." But when they attempted to escape, the elder saw them. His eyes flamed with fury as he moved towards them. Zinlay and Sifo ran through the forest, the old man closing in behind them. They couldn't do this for long. They crashed into the village, and Zinlay confronted him. "It's finished," she told him. "You can't win." The elder laughed, but it was hollow. "You think you've beaten me?" he said. "The ritual isn't complete, but it's not over." He raised his hands, and the ground began to shake. Zinlay realized he was trying to restart the ritual, using the last of his strength. She knew she had to stop him, but she didn't know how. Zinlay remembered her mother's sacrifice. Nomvula had given her life to lock the evil in, and Zinlay now understood what she had to do. She advanced, the journal held tight in her hands. "If you want it, come and take it," she said. The elder struck her, but Zinlay was ready. She tossed the journal into the river, and the river swept it away. The elder cried out, his body crumbling to dust as the ritual magic did not work. Zinlay fell to her knees, exhausted but victorious. It was finally over. They conducted a ritual in the village to celebrate Zinlay and her mother. The reed dance had not that year been disrupted by war and conflict, a celebration of life and renewal. Zinlay was on the riverbank and could see maidens dancing. She felt the presence of her mother, a soft touch of the air. Sifo rose with her, his strength returning. "What now?" he asked. Zinlay smiled. "Now, we live," she said. But when she spun on her heel to move away, she spotted a single reed floating on the river. It was blackened, as were the ones in her visions. She drew it out, her heart racing. Someplace, deep in the forest, she heard a whisper.